When I was 12, my family moved to a rural area in Oregon, miles from the nearest town. We lived on a large piece of land surrounded by dense pine forest. It was peaceful, quiet, and completely isolating. The house itself was built in the 1940s. It had the old house starter pack with things like creaky floors, a creepy attic, and a detached rundown shed that sat about 30 feet from the back door. The shed was packed with old tools and junk from the previous owner. My dad always meant to clean it out, but he never did. For the most part, we stayed away from it. I remember the first time I noticed something strange. It was a weeknight, close to midnight. I was up reading with a flashlight under the covers when I heard our dog, Max, barking uncontrollably. Max was a golden retriever, super friendly but alert. When he barks like that, it meant something was wrong. I crept out of bed and peeked out the window. He was facing the shed, barking into the darkness. The motion sensor light by the back door was on, casting long shadows across the lawn. I couldn't see anyone, but Max wouldn't stop. I didn't go out there. I just watched for a bit until he calmed down. Then I walked away. The next morning, we found deep boot prints in the dirt between the house and the shed. My dad dismissed it, saying it was probably a neighbor or a drifter passing through. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Over the next few weeks, Max barked at that shed multiple times. Every time, we'd look outside and find nothing. But the footprints would be back, and they always led to the shed, never away from it. One night, around 2 a.m., I woke up to the sound of footsteps on the gravel outside my window, and I froze. The footsteps stopped, then resumed, moving toward the shed. I peeked through the blinds, and the light by the back door flicked on, and for just a second, I saw him, a tall man, standing beside the shed door. He was wearing what looked like a dirty gray coat. His face was obscured by shadows, and then the light went out. My heart pounded in my chest as I backed away from the window. I woke my parents. My dad grabbed his rifle and went outside, but the man was gone. The footprints were fresh, though, right up to the shed. This time, my dad decided to check inside. He unlocked the padlock and pulled the doors open, but all there were just rusty tools and old tarps. He added a new lock and reinforced the doors. For a while, things were quiet. Then, a month later, Max went missing. We searched everywhere. Through the woods, up and down the road, even asked neighbors. He was gone. I was completely heartbroken. I held out hope that he'd return, and he just got lost in the woods. That night, I couldn't sleep at all. I kept thinking about the shed and Max, about the man I'd seen. Around 3 a.m., I heard the back door creak. I got out of bed and tiptoed into the hallway. My dad was already up, holding his rifle. We moved to the back door, just in time to see the motion light flicker on. There, standing by the shed, was the man again. Only this time, he was holding something in one hand, a knife, in the other, Max's collar. When I saw this, I felt like my life was half sucked out of my body, like this horrible weightlessness, in which I almost felt like I was going to fall down. My dad shouted and raised the rifle, but the man turned and ran into the woods. We called the police, and they searched the area, but found no trace of him. What they did find inside the shed made me sick. The floor had been cleared. In the dirt, someone had carved symbols, crude, disturbing images. In the corner was a pile of bones, animal bones, hopefully. It got worse. Behind a false panel in the shed wall, the officers found a backpack filled with items that weren't ours. Wallets, watches, and a few pieces of worn clothing. Things that must have belonged to someone, multiple someones.
When I was 13, my family moved to an old farmhouse just outside of La Pine, Oregon. It wasn't exactly a dream home, more like an impulsive decision my dad made after getting laid off. The property was cheap, sprawling, and quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that makes the back of your neck itch. The house sat on the edge of a dense pine forest. It had a leaning barn, a sagging porch, and a crawl space underneath the floor that my dad said was nothing to worry about. I didn't like that crawl space from the start. It had a narrow wooden hatch in the hallway, sealed with a rusted hook. My mom said it was only for plumbing access, but on the first night, lying in my new room surrounded by unpacked boxes, I heard something down there. A dragging sound, slow, measured, like someone shifting their weight across dirt. I froze, told myself it was pipes, or maybe a raccoon. But the sound happened again. A scrape, then a faint thud. Something alive, something moving, was under us. I didn't sleep at all. A few days later, our cat Juniper went missing. She was an indoor cat, but the kitchen window had been nudged open. Dad blamed the wind, but the latch was on the inside. That same night, around 1 a.m., I heard something else. Whispering, faint, muffled, like someone talking through a blanket or through floorboards. It came from the crawl space hatch in the hallway. I crept out of my room, every step trembling. The whispering stopped the moment I got close. Then came a gentle tap, once, twice, 3 times, from the other side of the hatch. I backed away as quietly as I could, heart punching at my ribs. When I told my parents the next morning, they exchanged that look. The one parents give when they think you're being dramatic. Dad checked the hatch. "See, nothing," he said, but he didn't open it. About a week later, we woke to deep footprints in the frost outside the house. Bare footprints, human-looking, but longer, wider, wrong. They circled the house and stopped at the foundation vent that led straight into the crawl space. My dad's face drained of color. "That vent's too small for anything bigger than a possum," he mumbled, but he boarded it up anyway. That night, the scratching started, light at first, like nails gliding against wood. Then more frantic, like something trapped. At 3 a.m., Mom woke me up whispering, "Do you hear that?" We stood in the hallway together, listening to the crawl space hatch rattle. A single deliberate push from underneath pressed against it. Then another, harder. Thunk, thunk. Mom grabbed my arm and backed us into her room. Neither of us slept. 2 mornings later, the hatch was open. The hook hadn't broken. It was unlatched, perfectly lifted. Dad insisted one of us must have left it that way, but even he didn't believe what he was saying. He nailed it shut. That night, the whispering came back, angrier, faster, directly onto my room. I pressed my ear to the old wooden floorboards, and my blood ran cold. It wasn't whispering, it was breathing. Slow, raspy, wet breaths. Like each inhale hurt. Like each exhale carried mud. I bolted to my parents' room shaking. Dad stormed out, furious and terrified, holding a crowbar. He stomped to the hallway and drove the crowbar under the nailed hatch, ripping it open. He clicked on his flashlight. "Nothing," he said. But the crawl space was warm, like something had been living down there, and the earth looked disturbed, as if something had been nesting. Dad sealed it again, this time with screws. A month later, strange things kept happening. Food went missing. Lights flickered at random hours. I'd wake up to the sound of footsteps in the hall, except when I opened my door, no one was there.
We finally called animal control. 2 officers came and checked the crawl space, the attic, the walls. They found empty candy wrappers, a pile of old blankets, a rusted pocket knife, a single, filthy pillow. "It looks like someone's been staying here," one of the officers said. My mom nearly fainted. Dad kept insisting it was squatters, not something paranormal. But then they found something else. Behind a loose board in the wall near the crawl space, there was a stash. 2 broken watches, a child's mitten, a cracked pair of glasses, a paper notebook soaked in something dark. The notebook contained scribbles, just lines, circles, and chaotic symbols. Like someone trying to copy letters but not understanding them. On one page, there was something clear, a simple drawing of our house, and in every window, a pair of eyes, except my room, which had none. Under the drawing was a shaky line of text. I like the quiet one. I felt the floor tilt beneath me. I was the quiet one. 2 nights after the officers left, around 4 a.m., I heard something thump against my bedroom door. Soft, small. I thought it was Mom. But when I opened the door, Juniper was lying there, except she wasn't moving. Her fur was matted, her body stiff and cold. Her paws were covered in dirt. Someone had placed her in front of my door like a gift. I screamed loud enough to wake the whole forest. My parents dragged me into their room and barricaded the door. Dad gripped his rifle, shaking with rage. Something moved across the hallway outside. Slow, dragging steps. A low murmur, then a laugh. Not a loud laugh, worse. A whisper of a laugh, breathless, gurgling, inches from the door. I pressed my hands over my ears. Mom clutched my shoulders. Dad shouted through the door, "Get away from my family." The steps paused. Silence. Then the faintest whisper slithered under the door. "Quiet one." Dad completely lost it. He ripped the door open and fired down the hall. The muzzle flash lit up the entire corridor. Something tall and thin darted toward the crawlspace hatch. Dad fired again. Screwed boards splintered. The thing or person was gone. We left the next morning. Didn't pack half our stuff. Didn't look back. Dad boarded up the house, and we drove to a motel 2 towns away. 2 days later, police cudged. They had searched the crawl space again. This time, they found a tunnel. A hand-dug passage leading from underneath our house, deep into the forest. They followed it until it opened into a small underground chamber. Inside were piles of stolen clothes, wrappers, bones, and dozens of drawings of our house. Drawings of me. Worst of all, they found footprints. Bare. Wide. Human butt. Not quite. And they were fresh. Whoever or whatever it was, they never found it. The night before we officially moved out of Oregon, I looked out the motel window one last time. The parking lot was lit by a single flickering lamp. At the edge of that light, near the tree line, stood something tall and thin, its head tilted, watching. Just watching. I blinked and it was gone. To this day, I don't know what lived under our house. I don't know if it was human. I don't know if it ever stopped watching. But sometimes, late at night when everything is still, I swear I hear something moving under my floorboards again. I shit you not. She almost immediately spilled a huge drop of red wine on my light blue couch. I composed myself, but I wanted to scream. I said it's okay, as I ran to the kitchen to get a damp paper towel and sponge. I ran back to the couch and blotted it as quickly as I could before it would settle. She kept apologizing, and I kept saying it was okay. After this, it got a little more tense. And to break the tension, I suggested I get the tree out of the attic. So I went up to the attic, slid over the giant box with all the tree parts in it, and started handing her down the pieces one by one, each piece getting bigger until we got to the biggest part, the part that I wouldn't be able to handle going down the ladder on my own. She grabbed it with ease. I had to remember this girl's size. Once everything was handed down, I went back down, and we assembled the tree in the living room with Christmas music playing. I poured her more wine, and I drank more myself. I loosened up a bit more. Wine makes any situation feel better. Once we had the tree set up, next was the ornaments. I told her my ornaments were all in the crawl space. These ornaments were all from my childhood. My parents gave me bins and bins of Christmas decorations. So I went down to the crawl space, and one by one started taking out the bins, while I left Tracy in the living room to relax. As I was doing all of this, I started feeling woozy, like the wine was getting to my head. I've never been a heavy drinker, so I do have a low tolerance. but I felt like I hadn't drank that much to feel this way. I grabbed the first bin and started lugging it up the stairs. By the time I got to the top, Tracy wasn't anywhere in sight. I assumed she was in the bathroom at first and called her name. I looked around each room and then saw that the bathroom was empty. I scratched my head in confusion as I kept calling her name. I went to message her on Snap, but she never opened the Snap. I checked the 2 bedrooms too, but she was gone. I couldn't believe this. She snuck out on me. This was when I started wondering if she thought I was ugly or weird or something, even though, truthfully, I wasn't even really into her either. I crashed onto the couch, which suddenly felt a lot more comfortable than before. And honestly, as far as I remember, I periodically checked my phone to see if she opened my Snap, and just watched whatever was on TV, until my memory just faded to black. I swear, everything just went black. And then, I woke up in darkness. No lights, no TV on. I looked around in the dark room, and I knew I was hearing things. I felt like I was still on the couch, and I felt weak. My limbs were hard to move, but I managed to find my phone right under me within seconds, and I checked the time. The second the phone screen lit up, I saw it, even though the light was facing toward me. That glow from my phone screen with the brightness all the way up revealed the outline of a tall person's silhouette standing in front of me. For some reason, I didn't scream. I just put the phone down, bringing the room back to darkness. I finally opened my mouth to say, "Tracy," hoping it was her, but still not in that moment, remembering what had happened earlier. Whoever was standing there didn't answer me. I eventually picked my phone back up and turned on the flashlight, and I saw that it was in fact Tracy standing in front of me. She wasn't moving. She was just looking down at me. I felt locked to the couch. I do not know if it was because of pure fear or the effects of whatever she had obviously laced me with. I genuinely was having a hard time moving my limbs. I felt weak and helpless. All I could manage to say was, "Tracy," a couple more times. She turned towards the stairs, and again, I swear, she sprinted toward them, and all I heard were the disturbingly loud stomps of her running down the stairs. I heard something slam from downstairs. Looking back, I'd imagine it was the front door. Everything looked and sounded so wanky in those minutes after I woke up. Each passing minute, I felt more and more clear-headed, and moving became easier. I checked Snapchat to see that her account was gone. AK. She blocked me. I looked out the front window and saw no cars outside besides my own and the neighbors. And then I realized I never saw the vehicle that she arrived in, or if she even arrived in one. I checked my entire home from top to bottom, checking for anything that could have been stolen. The only items I found missing seemed kind of bizarre at first, but honestly made so much sense soon after. Every last bottle of pills from my house was gone. All my vitamins and supplements, my bottles of Adderall, and even the bottle of Oxy that I had prescribed but never fully used after a surgery. Those were in the drawer next to my bed. I noticed a bottle of vodka was taken from my mini fridge in my room, too, but other than that, I didn't see anything else that could have been stolen. Still, I called the police right then and reported the robbery. I gave the Snapchat username and explained that I never got her number or knew anything really about her identity, minus the name that she gave me, which was Tracy Gibson. The police knocked on my neighbor's door, since all of our homes are attached, even though it was like 1 a.m., with me standing next to them. They questioned if he'd seen or heard anything strange, to which he said no, he'd been asleep. After about 20 minutes, the police left. I made sure all of my keys were still in place so as to make sure she could get back in. But other than that, this Tracy person disappeared without a trace. I knew her behavior was quirky and wonky from the first few minutes of meeting her, and it makes so much sense now. I won't even call it a theory because I just know this is the truth. I think that girl, or woman I should say, was older than she claimed, and she was potentially homeless with a serious drug addiction. I think she drowned herself in perfume to mask the body odor that was honestly still showing through. She laced my wine with something when I was in the attic, clearly. I don't know exactly how long I was out, but it was enough for her to scour my entire home for any and all drugs and supplements.